Chairman Respicio,
Present.
Senator Tom Atta, Speaker Wampat, Vice Speaker Cruz, Senator Munya Barnes, Senator Uggan, Senator Rodriguez, Senator San Nicolas, Senator Underwood, Senator Tony Atta,
Good morning, President.
Senator Torres. Mr. Chair, there is a quorum.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion that we excuse Speaker Wampat and Senator Barnes, who's not yet present for the COR meeting. Okay, it's been moved and it's seconded. And on that motion, there's no objections, so ordered. On item 3, review and accept COR meeting minutes from March 28, 2016. And so the minutes have been prepared by the clerk and her staff. And if you're ready to adopt these minutes subject to corrections, I'll entertain a motion to do that. Okay, it's been moved and second. On the motion to adopt these meeting minutes for COR's meeting March 28, 2016, subject to correction, there being no objections, so ordered. On item 4, document tracking, although Senator Barnes is not present for this rules meeting, I did receive from her an update on 3 things. On the summary for zone changes, she basically says there's no change there. On the rules and regulations, she's provided a spreadsheet, and that her office has written memos to the different senators of oversight responsibility over these rules and regs, and so that spreadsheet is there. And more specifically on the appointments, the report that Senator Barnes submitted, there's 22 appointments before this legislature that have yet to be acted on for one reason or the other, and so I submit that spreadsheet for your review as well. So on item 5, ratification of referrals, I'll do this individually. I need a motion that we ratify the referrals I made for bill numbers 284-33 through 299-33. Senator Uggan? Yeah, item B is separate because since I made a re-referral for 4 bills, I would have to ask COR to ratify those re-referrals as well. So just for item A. Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and second. Any objections? No objections, so ordered. Item B, I know it's going to generate some discussion, so I'll entertain a motion, if there is a motion, to approve my re-referral of bill numbers 184-33 COR, 240-33 LS, 249-33 COR, and 271-33 COR. And colleagues, the reasons for these referrals is because the other day we were subjected to an informational hearing by Senator Rodriguez on these 4 bills that were referred to another committee, and because there was pending a public hearing for these 4 bills, Senator Rodriguez went ahead and had an informational hearing, and tonight Senator Underwood will have a community hearing on another bill that she would had liked to take action in Senator San Nicolas' committee. And so with these re-referrals, there is one re-referral I made to Senator Rodriguez because in one of his bills, the funding source is the Environmental Health Fund, and it does not impact the general fund, and it's still a subject matter over public health. And so logically, I re-referred that to Senator Dennis. And the other 3 bills, while they didn't originally contain any appropriation measures in them, one of the bills would authorize the governor to use transfer authority and set up some kind of a payment plan to recognize that this is an obligation of the government. And so since that impacts the appropriations, I logically re-referred that to Vice Speaker Cruz, who has oversight over appropriations. And same with the other bill with the tax credits. That certainly has impact in the budget for the general fund. And so having said all that, I would like to entertain a motion that we approve my re-referrals contained in item B. It's been moved. Second. Any objections?
Objection.
There's an objection, so we'll entertain some discussion. Senator Stiglitz?
Just an objection, Mr. Chairman, on the re-referral on the bills. I'm at a loss as to understand why these bills are being removed from my committee when my committee has so far been responsible for handling almost every single instance of matters concerning the pay of employees of the government of Guam. The Competitive Wage Act was referred to my committee. It was a difficult measure to handle, and so when it comes to us handling the difficult items, the committee is very prepared to do so. And with respect to these items and the lack of funding that we have, or the funding challenges that we have with them, the committee is again prepared to do its duty to handle these issues, and I would like to be able to do my work. So I would like to understand why they're being removed and object, and hopefully have the committee allow them to be retained in my committee so that we can address them when the funding becomes available.
But more to what you just said, the funding is available in one instance, particularly the bill that's going to be funded through the Environmental Health Fund. They do have a bank balance in the AS 400, and that was introduced almost 7 months ago. And so the sponsor of the bill, who also has oversight over the Department of Public Health, believe that time is of the essence for all of those 4 bills. And so some action had to be taken, and this is why he conducted the informational hearing, which he understood from the very beginning that it was not a public hearing, that it was an informational hearing, and that it was going to determine if there's a public interest with those particular bills. And so after that informational hearing, I determined that there is significant public interest, at least from those who are to be affected by these bills. And I exercised my authority as chairman on rules to re-refer these bills to other committees which have similar jurisdiction over the matter. So when the bill, these bills could have gone to these committees originally, but because you do have specific oversight over the Competitive Wage Act and employee compensation and incentive pay and things like that, that certainly is within your subject matter jurisdiction. But as a result of having to wait for these bills to have a public hearing, the sponsor took it upon himself. And then tonight we're going to hear from another sponsor who feels the same way. And so your objections are noted, and if you have nothing further to add, but I'll certainly recognize you for as much as you need to speak, I'd like to ask Senator Underwood to be recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think for me it's really an informational question that I'm posing right now, because I also, as you had noted, I also have a bill that had been in committee, and so I just want to know the processes for requesting a re-referral of bills, because as you know, Bill 243-33 is an act to authorize the voluntary reduction of pay of the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the senators. And so in reviewing the history of the bills relative to the repeal of salaries, the salaries of elected officials and appointed officials, I had seen that there were various committees to which they were referred, and among them is, of course, the Committee on Finance and Taxation had handled Bill 4, and then the Committee on Rules, Federal, Foreign, and Micronesian Affairs had oversight over Bill 201, which was to exclude the senators from the Competitive Wage Act. And then Bill 204 was also handled by the Committee on Finance Taxation. So I'm not questioning, your authority. I'm just needing to have clarity as a freshman senator, the criteria and the basis for referring and then re-referring, especially since now Bill 243 also has to do with the reduction of salaries, voluntary reduction of salaries for senators and governor and lieutenant governor.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Underwood, for that very, very important question. As we know, when a bill is introduced, I, as Committee on Rules Chair, will take a look at the bill. And first thing that comes to my mind, if there's an appropriation attached to the bill, it automatically goes to, per the standing rules, it goes to the Committee on Appropriations. If there's an appropriation attached to the bill.
Was there a typo?
Which one, Mr. Vice Speaker? No, no, no. No, 243 is not in the referral, and I'll get to that. So if there's a bill to do something specific, and then the standing rules are very clear that that committee has jurisdiction over that subject matter. And in the cases you cited, those bills stem from the Competitive Wage Act, which Senator Nicholas has authority over the Competitive Wage Act through the Department of Administration. The instance where I referred Senator McCready's bill to my committee, it was because that bill just affected the senator's pay. And so here in the standing rules in the legislature, the Committee on Rules has jurisdiction over issues that affect the legislature, senators, and our budget. And so I didn't skirt my responsibility there, and I referred that bill to me. Bill 204 dealt with not only senators, but all the other positions, and so that was referred to Senator Nicholas. In the case of Bill 243, it would affect the governor, lieutenant governor, and the senators. So it's clearly not just affecting senators. So that went to Senator Nicholas's committee because those salaries originated from the Competitive Wage Act, and that was the basis. But there's some instances where past legislatures did joint referrals and subsequent referrals, and as chairman on rules, I've never ever done that over the last several years, because when you refer one bill to more than one committee, you have multiple jurisdictions, and the fate of that bill is probably going to be in one committee and try to move forward in the other committee. So I've never done subsequent referrals. If it's a bill that money's already been appropriated and the department would like to reprogram that money, the Vice Speaker has been very collegial to recognize that that bill should go to the senator has oversight over that department because the appropriation was already made. So we're trying to be very methodical and very consistent. And so when I make a referral and the sponsor doesn't agree with my referral, we will talk about it. And if the committee that I referred the bill to that has jurisdiction over that bill, if the chairperson agrees to allow me to re-refer it to another committee, we've made those instances. So sometimes you see bills that have been referred or re-referred to a committee that has really no clear underlining jurisdiction over that issue, but because several senators have worked it out, so I accommodate those requests. Sometimes before a bill is introduced, a sponsor will say, I believe I'll go to this committee, but I talked to that senator and that chairperson is willing to have it go to another committee, and those are instances, and we made those accommodations. Those times where I believe that the bill should remain in a particular committee I referred, I've always welcomed the member to bring it up in rules, and if there's 6 members here that say that bill should go somewhere else, then that bill would go somewhere else.
I see.
Yeah, so it's a open process. It's and I'm very flexible in terms of trying to accommodate the will of the body here in rules and also the will of the body on the floor. And so in this case, there was 4 bills that were referred to the committee who had oversight over these issues. But in looking at these bills and what came out at the informational hearing, again, in the case of public health, the funding source is the Environmental Health Fund. It's not a general fund appropriation. There was no appropriations in any of these bills. But as a result of that community informational hearing, those informations were revealed. And so I decided, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
didn't mean to
Go ahead.
interrupt.
No, go ahead.
So in other words, what I'm hearing you say is that the basis for the re-referrals of the 4 bills was based on the informational hearing and the compelling testimonies, and that was in part of the decision. So tonight, I am not sure really who will be attending. So there is a chance for Bill 243-33 to have a public hearing, perhaps for reconsideration of the chairman based on that, or reconsideration of the chairman of Committee on Rules. to re-refer.
But your bill still affects the governor and lieutenant governor.
So if it was amended to just be centers,
But you won't.
a new bill introduced, that's what
If
you're
you
saying?
introduced a new bill and you were specific to who would be affected by that bill, then of course the referral will be made accordingly.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, to my knowledge, the bills that you're trying to re-refer from my committee, they were not referred to my committee in error. They are validly.
That's correct.
They were. I don't know how this works
And
at this point.
my re-referrals were not made in error either.
Okay. And so my question then is, if what you stated earlier was that you would re-refer from a committee when the committee chair concurs, then why are you re-referring these bills when I, as committee chair, am not concurring to their re-referral?
Well, that's why I said if I can't get concurrence at the beginning, then the question would have to be put before this forum. Senator Rodriguez?
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the re-referrals. The bottom line here, Mr. Chairman and fellow colleagues, is that these bills were referred to a specific committee. It's a duty, and we're all, at least most of us here, are committee chairpersons. And when we do our work, and the chairman had indicated that he wants to do his work, you don't do your work behind closed doors and doing it on your own. We are a deliberative body. The first simple, basic task in doing your work and handling a bill referred to is having a public hearing the public's input, and not suppressing their voices. And for one of these bills, it's been in committee for over 7 months. For the others, it's been over 2 months that this bill has been sitting in committee. The chairman had indicated to stakeholders that he will not be moving it forward. And not giving the opportunity for the rest of us who are elected senators to be able to weigh in on this. And so for me, that's the bottom line, and I'm happy that we were able to get public input at a hearing that I conducted a few days ago, and I'm happy for this re-referral, and hopefully we can move forward in getting this done. And really, Mr. Chair, in a public hearing in that setting, in a forum, if there's no money, if the facts are revealed that we can't support these initiatives, at least for 3 of these bills that have started even before my time, and we're just ensuring that it's pursued and enacted. If there's no resources for that, that's the forum to get it. You don't do these things in secret, Mr. Chairman. So I support the re-referrals. And I now move to call for the question.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I do need to at least raise a point of personal privilege and clarify some of the statements that were made. First of all, the retiring speaker held one of my bills in his committee for 10 months, much longer than any of these bills that I've had. And so this issue of suppressing voices, it sounds good, but it's just not being consistently applied. And I never did an informational hearing. I never tried to go around the process. I never asked for my bill to be re-referred because I respect the legislative process and I respect the chairmanships of the committees. And all I'm asking from this Committee on Rules is the same respect, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion on this re-referral? And so on the motion that the re-referrals of bill numbers 184-33, 240-33, 249-33, and 271-33, there's been an objection, so all those in favor, show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion carries. Okay. On the appointments, so I need a motion that we ratify the referrals I made regarding appointments. Okay, it's been moved. There's any objections? No objections, so ordered. As well as resolutions, that those referrals be ratified. Okay, it's been moved and second, and there's no objections, so ordered. So on the session agenda, as we always do in every rules meeting, is I will go around and recognize each member and ask that they make motions to place either a bill, resolution, or appointment on the agenda. And I know that the Vice Speaker has Senator Barnes's list, and I hope someone has Speaker Wampet. So I'll begin by recognizing our Vice Chairman, Senator Ada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move to place bill number 263-33 on the agenda, and bill 26333 has to do with, it's actually a technical correction on the sale of an easement here in Agana, and it's simply correcting the size of the area of the easement.
Okay. On Senator Ada's motion, Senator Tom Ada's motion to place Bill 263-33 and whatever version is reported out. There being no objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to move to place Bill 290-33. It places certain public properties in GIGO under the administrative jurisdiction of the Inarajan Mayor and the Inarajan Municipal Planning Council. And this bill is necessary because in order to be eligible for federal funding, the grantee must have site control, and so this bill would achieve that.
Okay. On that motion to place Bill 290-33 and again whatever version is reported out of committee, there being no objections, so ordered.
That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Does anybody have Speaker Wampad's list? No. Well, we can come back to that. Mr. Vice Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, the bills I'm going to ask for are contingent on the public hearings. All right, this afternoon I'm having a hearing on 294 and 295 for appropriations to the Election Commission so that they can conduct the upcoming elections, and 295 to provide some much needed funds to the Board of Education, Guam Department of Education. I'm going to conduct those hearings this
So for
evening.
those two bills, would you let me make those motions under motions? I just want to make sure that the public hearing is conducted.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's what I'm just
So,
saying.
I will move it
just
on
so
the
that
floor tomorrow.
I'm not making them.
Thank you
I'm
for-
just
yeah.
saying that those are the two that I would like to after I have the hearing. Also, Mr. Chairman, I'm having a further roundtable on bill number 2, which is the retirement bill. Depending on how that hearing goes on Thursday, we've, I think, 3 reams of committee reports have been generated, and they're all online. So whatever the discussion that comes out on Thursday, I may be requesting that you make a motion
Okay.
that I bring Bill 2 to the floor next week.
Okay.
So I'm just giving you advance notice that those are the 3 bills that I'm not officially moving at this point, but just giving CORE the heads up that I may be doing that after I have the hearings tonight and tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
And do you have Senator Barnes's bills?
Senator Barnes requests that Bill 252 and 276 be placed on the upcoming agenda, and she has one appointment, a Mr. Thomas Borja, to the GORA board.
So could you just please read the titles? Or just-
276 is Cushing Zoo, 252, hold on a sec. You know, I didn't get I only got the numbers.
Just for the people following along on television. Okay.
Mr. Chair, Bill 252 is an act to appropriate a sum of $910,000 from the fiscal year 2015 hotel occupancy
Okay.
tax unreserved fund balance to the Guam Visitors Bureau for safety-related capital improvement projects in Tuma.
Thank you. On that motion, hearing no objections, so ordered. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Madam Speaker. I'll come back to the speaker. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move to place Bill 190 dash 33, and this is will be a substitute bill, and it will be circulated this morning. Is relative to requiring that the National Clinical Mental Health Counselor exam be the sole requisite exam for licensure for licensed mental health counselor, and also to this is relative to establishing a licensed intern designation during the 3,000-hour postgraduate clinical experience period required for mental health professional licensure.
Okay, on the motion to place Bill 190-33, whatever version is reported out of committee, hearing no objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also like to place 3 appointments on the agenda. This is for the executive appointment of Ms. Melissa Weibo to serve as a Board of Trustees for the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority. You want me to do it all 3 at one time?
Okay, yeah.
And Mr. Eloy Lazama for the same board, and Ms. Lillian Perez Posadas also to serve as a Board of Trustee for the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority.
Okay, so on the motion to place those 3 appointments, hearing no objections, so ordered. Okay. Yes. Senator Uggan, Senator Frank Uggan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move for the placement of Bill number 106-33LS, which is relative to providing credit for career employees of the government of Guam who have completed their post-secondary or postgraduate education with the assistance of the Pedro Doc Sanchez Professional Scholarship, and who apply for supervisory or managerial positions within the agencies and departments of the government of Guam.
Okay. On that motion, hearing no objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. No appointments, right?
No.
Okay, just making sure. Senator San Nicolas?
I'll go ahead and pass, but if you can come back around to me,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so, Madam Speaker, are you ready? Okay, let me recognize Speaker Wampat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to, I would like to place 289-33, which is relative to authorize the governor to enter into a line of credit, direct loan, or alternative financing for the renovation of the Guam Memorial Hospital Labor and Delivery Ward and Child Health Care. I know that the chairman had a public hearing, so this, I guess, would be dependent upon the committee report being available. So,
Okay, on the Speaker's motion to place Bill 289-33 in whatever version is reported out of committee, hearing no objections, so ordered. Okay, you ready? Senator
Yes,
Stiglitz.
Mr. Chairman. Just appointments, Ms. Odessa Martinez to the Real Estate Commission, Mr. Christopher Murphy also to the Real Estate Commission, Ms. Camia Durking to the Board of Equalization. Those 3 appointments for now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, on the motion to place those appointments on the agenda, hearing no objections, so ordered. Senator Underwood?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any bills.
Okay, thank you. Let me recognize Senator Ada to make motions for my 2 bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make motion to place Bill 284-33 on the agenda. It's an act to amend the notice requirements for the sale of used tires.
Okay, and this is just a technical correction to current law.
That's
And
correct.
it doesn't change the intent of the law that's currently in place. So on the motion to place Bill 284-33 on the agenda, hearing no objections, so ordered.
I would also like to move to place Bill 287-33 on the agenda. It's an act to establish the Southern River Erosion Council and to mandate the creation of multi-year master plans to address the erosion issues related to rivers in southern Guam.
Okay, on that motion to place Bill 287-33, hearing no objections, so ordered. Thank you. Senator Tony Ada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks again for allowing us the opportunity to place several bills here onto the session agenda. The first bill I'd like to place on the agenda is Bill 230-33, and this is the relative to designating the Guam Chamorro Educational Facility Museum as the Senator Antonio M. Palomo Guam Chamorro Educational Facility.
Has that bill been amended? Whatever version the committee is going to report on. Is the committee ready?
Well, the part about the renaming is not a problem. We had a conversation, of course, with the author about the cost involved. We checked with the engineers, and there is a cost to it. I don't have identification of a funding source for it. So, but the author feels that, since the farmers market was named, that this should proceed forward, and I'm surely not going to be the one to hold it back for that, but in terms of the actualization of it without a funding source, I can't respond to. But, other than that, the amendment would be to remove the other long name of educational facility, which is strictly the Guam Museum, rather than adding on the educational facility.
Okay. Are there any objections to that motion? Hearing no objections, ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, I'd like to place, subject to the committee report being filed, and I spoke with the chairman prior to our meeting this morning, Bill 268-33, and this is relative to the commercial lease between Department of Land Management and the Dedo Payless Supermarket, which entails the buffer zone that is there between the highway and Payless Supermarket.
Okay. So on that motion to place Bill 268-23 on the agenda, hearing no objections, so ordered. Are you going to read for the others, or okay, Senator Torres?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to place Bill number 161-33, COR, into the agenda, sponsored by Senator McCready. This is an act to repeal and reenact Section 1026 of Chapter 10, Title 1, relative to establishing the Guam Liberation fishing events. Essentially what it does is it renames the Marianas Fishing Derby to the Guam Liberation fishing events. It also appropriates $35,000 from the Tourist Attraction Fund, and it designates the Guam Visitors Bureau as providing clerical, technical, and logistical support for the Guam Liberation fishing events.
Okay. On that motion to place Bill 161-23 on the agenda, hearing no objections, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to move to place Bill number 232-33 LS as amended. And this is a bill that's relative to the deposit of any fines imposed on scrap metal business. Oh, I'm sorry, it's actually much longer than that. I'll go back. It's relative to increasing civil penalties for scrap metal businesses who fail to properly follow reporting requirements as per Guam law. And it is also relative to the deposit of any fines imposed on scrap metal businesses in the Police Services Fund.
Okay. On that motion to place Bill 232-33 on the session agenda, hearing no objections, ordered. Okay, that's it. Thank you, Senator Torres. Okay, we've exhausted item 6 on this agenda. We've established the session agenda, and so next item on the agenda is open discussion. Oh, Senator Ada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just thank you for recognizing me. The other day we did have a informational hearing, and a legislative employee came to, he signed up to testify or to state his testify on the bill that was being heard that evening on the informational hearing. And I don't necessarily have an issue of individuals, especially even with our own legislative staffers coming to testify on bills. I think when an individual comes to say and they're testifying on their own personal as a citizen, but yet turns around and states that the bill that the hearing that the chairman is conducting is illegal, and then turns around and invokes that that saying by legal counsel, and maybe legal counsel can clarify this, that the informational hearing that the chairman did conduct that evening was illegal. And that was stated on the record, and also the media picked up on that the hearing that the chairman had that evening or that afternoon was illegal.
Well, I'm going to take a brief recess to confer with counsel.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the brief opportunity to confer with counsel. And the question posed by Senator Tony Adam is were the staffers' comments relative to the nature of that hearing, an illegal hearing, and it was based purportedly on a memo that our legal counsel wrote to Senator Nicholas's committee. And so I would like to give an opportunity to our legal counsel to address the issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was asked a couple questions. One was, do the standing rules allow for the author of the legislation to bypass the committee process and hear a bill on his own? And the second question was, do the standing rules subsequently allow that senator to file a committee report with the Committee on Rules on that legislation? In short, my answer was that the standing rules do not really allow for either scenario, but of course, and I'm shortening here, and my memo is available, and I would prefer that you cite it directly. That the however, if the statute, we have a statute in Guam law that requires a public hearing, and that statute would be met perhaps by a public hearing held by anyone. It's not clear that the public hearing by statute requires the hearing be held in accordance even with the standing rules. And as we know, once you get into the session floor, it's possible that the senators will make a motion to waive the standing rules, and if you waive the rules, then they're able to waive the rules, so they are able to perhaps bring a bill up on the session floor that did not have a committee report filed by the committee chair, which is what's required under the standing rules.
Request, because I know she's shortening her presentation, can I request, for purposes of the public, that that particular communication be read into the record? Because
yeah,
we are
I'd be happy to
discussing
do
it.
that.
Please, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you. I prefer to do that, actually. Okay, great. So the two questions, and then my answer was, regarding the first issue, the standing rules do not, I'm sorry, let me start again, I'll read the questions together. All right. Your office requested information as to the following questions. Do the standing rules allow for the author of legislation to bypass the committee process and hear a bill on his own? And two, do the standing rules subsequently allow that senator to file a committee report with the Committee on Rules on that said legislation? In short, the standing rules do not allow either scenario. Regarding the first issue, the standing rules do not plainly allow for an author of legislation to, as you put it, bypass the committee process to hear a bill on his own. Under the standing rules, following introduction, the chairperson of the Committee on Rules shall refer bills to the committee having the subject matter jurisdiction to which the bill most pertains, as determined by the chairperson of the Committee on Rules. After a bill is referred, the chairperson of the principal committee may decide to conduct a public hearing pursuant to Section 6.04A of the standing rules. To be sure, Section 6.04A2 states that the chairperson of a committee hearing a bill, or the chairperson's designee, if such designee is a member of the committee, is the official hearing officer for such bill. Therefore, unless the sponsor of a bill is the chairperson of the principal committee or is the chairperson's designee as required by Section 6.04A2, the sponsor may not conduct a public hearing of the bill. As to the second issue, a sponsor who is not the chairperson or designee of the principal committee and conducts a public hearing notwithstanding Section 6.04 may not file a committee report with the Committee on Rules. Section 6.04C restricts who may file committee reports to the standing committees to which bills were referred. A standing committee or its authorized subcommittee, upon reporting back to the Committee on Rules on bills or appointments referred to it, shall prepare and submit to the Committee on Rules a formal written committee report. Committee reports shall be formatted and compiled in accordance with these standing rules. In addition, a bill improperly heard in the manner contemplated here may not be placed on the session agenda without a report filed by the principal committee. Section 6.04D provides that, and quoting here again, no bill shall be placed on session agenda unless accompanied by a committee report conforming to the requirements of these rules, or unless the public hearing on the bill has been waived in accordance with 2103 of Title II. Except as specifically allowed, no bill may be placed on the floor without a majority of the committee members of the committee to which it was referred voting to pass or to report out only. It should be noted that even if a committee report is filed in this scenario, the standing rules indirectly prevent that committee, which does not have jurisdiction over the legislation, from amending or substituting the bill. Quote, any standing committee may recommend amendments to any bill referred to it which are germane to and not inconsistent with the subject as expressed in this title. Section 6.04B, that was quoting Section 6.04B. Note that notwithstanding the relevant sections of the standing rules that prevent a chairperson from hearing a bill not referred to his or her committee and subsequently filing a committee report on that bill, the bill may ultimately be considered by the body if it carries an affirmative vote to waive the standing rules on the session floor. Under Section 4.01, a standing rule may be suspended for more than one legislative day or amended or repealed or by resolution adopted by 8 votes. The rules may also be temporarily suspended pursuant to Section 4.02, which states that the operation of any rule may be temporarily suspended by an affirmative vote of 8 members, or it may be suspended, waived, or modified for that legislative day or subsequent legislative days by 8 affirmative votes. That being said, in the event that a bill is considered in this manner, the statutory requirements for a public hearing remain applicable. Specifically, a bill must have public hearing, and that hearing must be properly noticed in accordance with Open Government Law 2 GCA 2103A states that, quote, no bill may be passed by legislatura unless it has received a public hearing, except that when the presiding officer of legislatura certifies that emergency conditions exist involving danger to the public health or safety, the requirement for a public hearing may be waived, and in the event the bill is identical to a bill introduced earlier, which later bill received a public hearing, then a public hearing for the identical bill may be waived. Under the Open Government Law, 5 working days public notice and a second public notice at least 48 hours prior to the start of the hearing shall be given. Note that designations in the public notice other than public hearing, as the term is used in 2 GCA 2103, may not be adequate to fulfill the notice requirements under 5 GCA 8107. For example, notices that reference roundtables, informational hearings, or the like may not satisfy 5 GCA 8107, and by extension 2 GCA 2103, as they do not adequately inform the public of the legislation being considered by a committee that may then be considered by the body during session. Should you have any further questions, please contact our office.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think that just goes to what I was saying, that in nowhere in listening to legal counsel did I hear her say that the informational hearing was illegal. So I do have concerns when our legislative staffers do come out and say that a committee chair is holding an illegal hearing and turns around and says, as per legal counsel. So I think that this is a matter that we need to look into, and I think we should further explore into how we need to strengthen our standing rules.
Mr. Vice Speaker?
I have a more basic question. Was that legal opinion circulated to everybody on? because I just checked in mine and I didn't receive it.
No.
So I'm trying to figure out how a private citizen can be quoting legal opinion that wasn't even provided to any of us.
I can clarify that. That legal opinion was actually received by my office on our official public information email, so it is a public document. And if anybody would like a copy, we'll be more than happy to circulate it.
The Vice Speaker also raised an interesting point, is he showed up as a private citizen, but he would have only received that information as a public employee, as an employee of your office, and so...
Well, I just would like to, for emphasis, reread the last sentence of the letter. For example, notices that reference roundtables, informational hearings, or the like may not satisfy 5 GCA subsection 80107 and by extension 2 GCA subsection 2103 as they do not adequately inform the public of the legislation being considered by a committee that may then be considered by the body during session. So, earlier, Mr. Chairman, in the course of this Committee on Rules meeting, we talked about not suppressing voices, and now it feels like we're trying to suppress voices. So I would just like to see a little more consistency again and fairness again in the application of what it is that we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't think...
Wait, can I just ask Council if that statement applied to that particular notice for those particular bills? Or was that just a general statement saying that the other notices for roundtables and informational hearings may not conform to the...
Yeah, I did not investigate that particular one. I would need to see all the notices that went out.
Because that's the misinformation I want to clarify, because, again, your comment, your written memo, there was an attempt to take that out of context.
Well, just to clarify...
tying what you wrote to what Senator Rodriguez did, and so I needed you to clarify that.
And also, Mr. Chairman, if we were to zero in on that last sentence that Senator Nicholas had read, that's in the event that these bills actually went on the floor. We weren't even there yet. And so this was a hearing to get the people's voices heard. And so I want to thank my vice chair of the committee for bringing this matter up, because it is very important. There was an indication that these hearings were illegal pursuant to our legal counsel. And I want to protect our legal counsel's integrity and reputation, as well as this body. And so I'm glad that we have got on record that those statements were inaccurate. But it's really nothing new. We've had similar issues come up in the past in this term, where the same committee chair has indicated that bills that we pass here are illegal, only to be corrected by an AG opinion saying that it wasn't illegal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Again, point of personal privilege, Mr. Chairman. The AG's opinion that is being referenced stated that in spite of the bills not being conforming with Guam law, they did not present a threat to the debt service that was being pursued at the time. She did not say that the bills that were introduced were legal. We need to be careful with how we go about
can you read the AG
to...
opinion to the record? Because the AG opinion had said it is not in contravention of local law.
She stated that the
please read the
movement
if
of the
you have it, please read it so the
forward.
public can know for sure, and not just take this
again,
nice sound
and again,
bite.
Mr. Chairman, and this is what I'm very careful about. I don't want to get baited into a bickering contest. I want us to respect our authority as committee chairs, extend the same respect that we extend to everybody else. That's what I asked for in this Committee on Rules meeting, and unfortunately, I was not afforded it. And now there's trying to nitpick on the different nuances of what different legal interpretations are out there. But the reality is that, that informational hearing should never have happened. And we should have respected the committee chairs. And we should have just gone through the proper legislative process. And if everybody wants to try and validate themselves in some way, shape, or form, I think that the public will be the ultimate arbiter of that. But, Mr. Chairman, all I'm asking for is the same respect that I afforded I afford everyone else here and their committee chairmanship. And if it's not going to be afforded in this instance, I would at least ask that it be afforded in future instances. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, the body's already decided on the re-referrals of those bills, and you're still objecting to that, despite the body saying that we have to move forward. And maybe that's what we need to do. But in moving forward, I want to ask Senator Ada if it was his intent to suppress the legislative employee by bringing up the question.
Oh, absolutely not, Mr. Chairman. The suppression of the legislative employee, I would never do that. In previous bills, legislative employees have come forward and testified publicly on bills, but they stuck to the bill, what the bill contained. This legislative employee called the hearing, the informational hearing, illegal based on what they got from legal counsel. And I think that that's where we need to be careful. I mean, we're not here to suppress voices. You know, I've always been one of those that, you know, you need to get your voices heard. But when we have our legislative staffers coming in a personal capacity, but yet stating what they got from legal counsel, I think there's that fine line that was crossed, and I think that it should be really looked into.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the hearing wasn't properly noticed. It was noticed as a public hearing, and now everyone's calling it an informational hearing. As a matter of fact, in the beginning of that hearing, if I recall correctly, you two senators were trying to decide whether or not you can turn on the cameras. So clearly, I don't think the problem is with the legislative staffer. I think the problem is with everybody trying to figure out how to justify their actions. And if we just do things right, we won't be in this mess, Mr. Chairman.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I think he's absolutely right. We wouldn't be in this mess had the standing rules been vetted over before we started the 33rd Guam legislature. Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, I will reinstate my intent of looking further into the actions and see where we'll go from there, and hopefully we'll strengthen our standing rules and work on it.
But I don't know if there's a weakness in our standing rules. I think there's a concern that bills aren't being heard as quickly as they should be, and that's the source of the contention here. And certainly it's the prerogative of a chair to decide when to hold a hearing, decide when to report a bill out, but as chairpersons, we have to respect the will of the body. And what I can't understand is how one individual can thwart the will of the body. And that's where my concern is. I've never done anything in contravention to what this body wants me to do, what the session wants me to do. I'm just one vote. And until we recognize in a representative democracy, it's the will of the majority, and it's the will of the majority that must prevail. That's why we have a very open and deliberative process. We had an instance where a public hearing wasn't held, a re-referral was made, this Committee on Rules ratified that decision, and so we just have to move forward. We have a lot of work to do, and this is the way you move forward in a legislative process. It's not a dictatorship, it's not a totalitarian institution. We just have to recognize what the majority wants, and in this instance, the majority has spoken. And so, Senator, did you have a final comment? I know you're in a similar situation.
Yeah, so I was just trying to sort out, between the technical language of our legal counsel's opinion and then the comments that had been made by members of this very important Committee on Rules. And basically, for the people of Guam, they just want to know right now why there is so much bickering, right? And so to me, fundamental to this is really our communication, our ability to communicate with each other. And so just to be clear, the reason why I am holding a public meeting that I have stated is unofficial, that it is not, the information there is to solicit feedback from the community regarding a bill that would authorize the voluntary reduction of pay for the governor, lieutenant governor, and the senators. And the reason why I was compelled to solicit more information was because of the feedback that had been provided to me by our constituents. And so I have asked again for for this to be discussed with the committee chair who has jurisdiction over this. I have spoken to the Committee on Rules, and I'm just really asking for a response as to when or why this bill is not being put up for a public hearing, because it is grounded on the fundamental principle, the same principles by which Bill 204, which was to repeal the pay salaries, Bill 201, and Bill 4. And so, Mr. Chairman, we're asking, all of us are asking to be respected and to respect our chairmanship for the various committees. But, it's a matter of communication. So I'm just asking really that when I speak or I send messages to any of you, that you please respond to me when I request for an answer to a question that I have, that you respond. You say, no, I don't want for this bill to be reported, to have a public hearing for the following reasons. And so I'm doing this not so much to try to get it on the floor, but I'm responding. I'm responding really to our community who has continued to speak about their disgust, their disappointment with the pay raises, and so I'm really trying to find another avenue. And so today I would like to speak to the chair, Mr. Chairman, if I may, for clarification. I don't want to do anything illegal, but I do want to respond to our constituents. So in tonight's meeting, I am soliciting feedback on this bill. Now, once I get that feedback, I will share that with the rest of the body. And I will probably, whatever they might suggest to me, to introduce a bill that's just for senators. It could come out tonight. And so that's what I'm doing tonight. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I've been respectful of the rules. I've been respectful of every single one of you. I've been respectful of the chairman of the committee who has jurisdiction over this. Because historically there was also a bill that was given to me, that was introduced, that was under my jurisdiction. And I afforded that bill the public hearing in a very short time, and even round tables, because I respected the voice of that senator as the voice of the people who had elected him into office. So I'm asking the same respect, that you view me not as the individual senator, Narissa Underwood, but as this senator who was duly given the authority and the trust of the people who had put me in here to represent their voices. So that's basically, Mr. Chairman, all I'm asking, not only the chairman of the committee, but all of you as chairperson of the various committees. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Underwood. I want to just clarify with the council if you wrote any memos regarding tonight's community hearing. Nothing in writing, so we can't expect, I guess you can't be misinterpreted if you have nothing in writing regarding that instance, right? Okay. Any other open discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn subject to the call of the chair. Okay, it's been moved. Thank you, everybody.